communicable diseases across lower and middle income countries. We'll get you the very latest on that, plus all that's been happening and deliberations. Also, while we look at the implications for the West Africa sub-region, stay with us for details of that. Also, Russia is now wading in to the tension in Mali as it calls for calm and stability in the West Africa country, which is currently being run by the military regime. Details of that coming your way shortly. First, though, we give you a wrap of some of the major stories making the headlines across Africa.
Justice has been delivered nearly 6 years after the Akufo-Addo assault that shook Ivory Coast. 6 men have been sentenced to life in prison for their roles in a 2020 jihadist attack that killed 14 Ivorian soldiers at a border post in Akufo-Addo, a village in the country's northeast. The verdict, confirmed by lawyer Abdoulaye Ben Mete, marks one of the most significant rulings in Ivory Coast's ongoing fight against extremist violence spilling over from the Sahel. The attack, carried out overnight on 10th to 11th June 2020, targeted a military post near the border with Burkina Faso. Although no group claimed responsibility, authorities blamed jihadist fighters operating from Burkinabe territory, describing the assault as retaliation for a joint counter-terrorism operation conducted by Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso. Out of 45 defendants, 6 received life sentences, 17 were sentenced to 20 years in prison and fined 50 million CFA francs, and 1 received a 5-year sentence, while 21 were acquitted. The wide range of verdicts reflects the complex web of involvement in the attack, which investigators say included logistical support networks stretching across borders. Ugandan authorities said Tuesday that they have detained dozens of foreigners in a crackdown on illegal migration that the Internal Affairs Ministry suggested was linked to human traffickers and cyber scam operations. At least 231 people have been detained since Monday in operations that targeted a group of Nigerians living in the country's north, as well as another group of foreigners living together in a closed compound in Kampala, the capital. The second group included people from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Ghana, Myanmar, Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and Malaysia. All of them were staying in a highly restricted, self-contained apartment complex equipped with its own restaurant and internal facilities designed to restrict movement, according to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. 36 of the 169 people found in the compound were women. Displaced people who took refuge from conflict in an isolated South Sudan village were denied life-saving aid by the government, even as deaths there mounted, eyewitnesses and aid groups said. The Associated Press spoke with people who fled to the swamp-encircled community of Nyatem in recent weeks. They described having little food and no clean water in a place so desolate that a Starlink connection was used to call for help. When aid workers reached out to South Sudanese authorities with a request to deliver emergency relief, it was denied. Reports that dozens of people have died, including some of apparent starvation, made no difference. It was a no from local and international authorities. From the military, said Yashovadan, the head of mission for Doctors Without Borders in South Sudan, who goes by one name. Meanwhile, people are eating leaves and roots to survive. The United Nations World Food Programme, usually reticent about an issue that has simmered for years in South Sudan, also told the AP it had been blocked despite numerous engagements with both national and local authorities, according to the agency's country director, Atham Effendi. Gunmen have killed at least 29 people in an attack on a community in Nigeria's northeastern Adamawa state local officials say. The Islamic State group has said it was behind the attack without specifying its motive. Authorities and local residents said the militants raided a football pitch where people had been gathering and opened fire at random before burning houses, places of worship and motorcycles. State Governor Ahmadu Umaru Fintiri shared photos of himself arriving at the scene, describing the attack as an affront to our humanity. The governor's media office said the attack lasted several hours in Guyaku community in the Gombe local government area. BBC Verify has geolocated the photos shared of Fintiri's visit to a place called Sangere Mapindi, which is 4 kilometers to the southeast of the village of Guyaku. Surveying the damage in the area, his spokesperson wrote on Facebook that the atmosphere in the community remains tense, with grief and fear evident. Many families have abandoned their homes over concerns of further attacks. The spokesperson added, Fintiri posted on X, "We are intensifying security operations immediately to restore peace and ensure every resident feels safe in their home again." Social media videos analyzed by BBC Verify show the aftermath of the attack in Sangere Mapindi. In one verified clip, officials inspect the damage to the village's primary school and several burned-out motorbikes nearby.
Some of the major stories there are making the headlines across Africa. We're back home here in Accra, where health experts are converging over the next 3 days to compare notes on tackling the spike in non-communicable diseases across the lower and middle-income countries. Now, according to the World Health Organization, non-communicable diseases, NCDs, are now a leading cause of mortality in Africa, causing some 37% of all deaths in the WHO African regions as of 2019. So the bigger question is, how will the NIHR Global Health Research Center help in addressing some of these gaps? And that deliberation, as we know, is underway here in Accra, aimed at tackling all of these public health concerns. So let's get right into it. Joining us in studio now is Professor Kara Hansen, Director of the NIHR Global Health Research Program. Thank you for joining us. And also Professor Irene Ejapon is co-director, NIHR Global Health Research Center, as part of the Stop NCDs movement. Thank you all for joining us. I feel a bit intimidated having professors all joining me, but let's break it down for our average viewers. And I'll start off with you, Professor Kara. The point about the NIHR Global Research Center. What's the essence and why was it even set up in the first place?
Sure. So the NIHR is the UK's R&D arm for our own National Health Service, but we also fund a significant research program in low and middle income countries. And 4 years ago, we commissioned a significant investment in these NIHR research centers that are focused specifically on research on NCDs. Yep. And on strengthening capacity to do research on NCDs. So really these are teams made up of researchers from at least 2 and sometimes 3 low and middle income countries, plus a UK research team as well, that will work over a 5-year period to test new interventions to see how they work in helping to address that burden.
We'll talk about some of the indicators that you're working with now, but I want to come to Professor Irene Ejapon to start off by looking at what's exactly happening here in Accra. We hear of many of these conferences, but what's different about this one happening?
Okay. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and I think we are old friends.
I believe so, yes.
Yes, because at the start of this research, we presented it at the co-production. So right now, all the 5 centers are at the stage where they finished the co-production of interventions, and they are starting to implement and evaluate them. And part of the aim is not only to learn within the centers, but across the centers. So this meeting in Accra is the 3rd in a series. The first meeting was held in Dhaka in Bangladesh, the second in Leicester in the UK. So we are really honored that everybody said we want to go to Accra next. And we are deliberating, how do we learn across Latin America, across Southeast Asia, across West Africa. And we are looking at the data in detail and the way forward.
and it's a great time to be having this, because if you're looking at what's happening even nationally, Ghana is one of the countries running this universal primary healthcare policy. How does research come in to address or augment what was happening at the national level?
Well, many of the interventions that are aimed at identifying and managing NCDs take place at the primary healthcare level. They involve screening, they involve initiating people on treatment and supporting them to stay on treatment. And so looking at ways of strengthening care for NCDs through primary health care is a great research question, and one that I think Ghana is really well placed to help us address, given these new investments in your free primary health care system. Is
that coming up on day one of the interactions so far?
We heard about it today in our launch activities. So there was a representative for the Minister for Health and also from the National Health Insurance Agency who were there and talked about the free primary care ambitions and how the work of these consortia can fit in.
Professor Japan, how is this feeding into the campaign to stop NCDs?
Oh, it's really feeding, because I mentioned that we've generated a lot of data. Maybe I'll talk a bit about the baseline survey that we've done in 6 districts in Ghana, because part of what we are trying to do is in the districts where we are now putting the intervention in place, we are also going to track over time and see, is this intervention making a difference? So part of how this is contribution is the awareness raising. For example, if you look at the December 2025, where we randomly visited almost 1,800 households in 6 districts, talking to about 2,500 adults 18 and above, we found to our surprise, for example, that yes, a lot of people actually said, yes, somebody has screened me for my blood pressure before. Yeah. About 70% or more, somebody has checked my sugar before. It was mental health. That, nobody talks to us about our mental health. But there was a gap, because within these people also, we found people who said, oh yes, I've ever been told that I have hypertension. You had as many as 20% of people saying, yes, I've ever been told. But of those who had ever been told, only about half were continuing their treatment. And you had issues like, oh, I've taken the medicine for a few weeks, I'm tired, I've stopped. People were really not aware that with very good primary care, you can live your life to whatever without any of the complications that we recognize them by. For many of the people we're talking to, it's when you get a complication that you are sick and you need care. So even raising awareness that this is an invisible burden, and that's part of the intervention we are putting in place, that just once a year for free. Yeah. Come and be screened, because it's an invisible burden. And then also the education about changing lifestyle issues. So there's a lot that is of relevance.
Lifestyle has been the hurdle towards tackling these NCD issues. How much of work are you putting into that aspect, trying to educate people to appreciate the fact that, well, we need a change in lifestyle?
It's an important part of our intervention. Apart from the educational materials we are doing, our colleagues from Ashasi University are not here, but they've done a great innovation about it's called the NCD NutriBot. Because one of the things we found was that there was a lot of confusion around diet. People were saying, I've been told I should eat cabbage and carrots, and I can't afford it on my salary. And we are kind of going, where is that advice coming from? So the colleagues in Ashasi and GCPS, we worked together and they came out with this NutriBot, which pulls data from the internet and chats with you. So we are doing a lot of things. I'm just giving this as an example.
Professor Kara, and that challenge about financing, the economics of it will always come up for lower middle-income countries as well. How or in what ways can we bring about research that will feed policies in tackling that aspect of the gap that exists?
Well, I guess the first thing is that preventing NCDs in the first place prevents the significant economic burden of treating them when they become more serious. And that's both the burden to the health system of providing medicines and treatment, but also the burden to households of not being able to work, of losing people who are in their most productive ages. So I would start by saying the evidence suggests that prevention is a good way to manage the economic and financial burden. The second is to think about how we use insurance systems or other financing initiatives like the free primary healthcare program to make these preventive interventions accessible to all, and to choose a package of interventions that we know are effective and to make them, to enable them to be delivered at the primary care level, at the maybe even the sub-district level, where we have the health infrastructure in place to have that interface with communities in the first place, so that diseases can be detected early and managed from the get-go.
We're looking at the outlook, regionally speaking. It's now the leading cause of death in the Africa region. How much of a challenge is it for you that now you have to do a bit more work in terms of research, trying to identify what the causative factors are and how we can solve them?
Well, it is a huge and growing burden. So you said that it's a leading cause of death. Also, the levels of something like diabetes have increased 90%, almost doubled since 1990. So we really are seeing an epidemic of non-communicable disease. So it is an extra challenge that this rising burden of NCDs coexists at the same time with the unsolved burden of infectious diseases. So I think it's really important to be able to generate this evidence to enable health systems to deliver these services to people who need them close to the home.
Are you just centered on research and development?
So when we commissioned the centers, we asked that they give equal emphasis to doing research and to strengthening capacity to do research. Because we felt that that was one way of really sustaining the health system gains that might arise from the new research. So creating a cadre in each country, and there are 12 different low and middle income countries involved in this whole program of work. You're creating trained cadres who are able to become independent researchers and carry on.
Probably I'll get back to you shortly on how some of these countries are performing. But Professor Ejapon, the point about the kind of partnerships that you're striking now, because you need partnerships going into the future if you're to succeed on this one. What kind of partnerships are you working on now?
Well, we are working both on research and then policy and practice partnerships, because this is applied research. We want research that makes a difference. We want answers that transform people's lives. In terms of research partnerships, we have within the Stop NCD, we have partnerships within Ghana. I mentioned at Ashesi University. We are working in Niger with LASTEL. We are working in Burkina Faso with the Catholic University of West Africa at Bobo de la So. And then in terms of partnerships in each country, we've been working closely with the Ministry of Health. In Ghana, we've been working with the Ghana NCD Alliance. In Niger, they've been working with the Niger NCD Alliance. In Burkina Faso, there's no NCD Alliance, so they are working with several CSOs. Right. And then also in Ghana, the Ministry of Health has an agency model. So we've been working with the Ghana Health Service, with the National Health Insurance Authority, with CHAG. So if our intervention has been done closely with them, the work we are doing now in the 3 districts to test whether does this make a difference in Kwawa Fram Plains North, in Shayo Sudoku, in Ga South. We are working very closely with Ghana Health Service. In fact, we are partners, so it's very much. And here at Joy FM, we are partnering with you, so you are a partner.
A good old friend you are, indeed. Okay, I'll get back to you on public education and probably some of the things we ought to know. We could possibly take advantage of this platform to reach out to more people on that. But just to close the chapter on how countries are performing. I don't know, are you creating a league table for countries, or you're trying to just assess them independently on how they're performing?
So as a set of research programs, they're all performing exceedingly well. So they have all done this foundational work in understanding behavior, in identifying interventions, and now they've set up in each of their settings studies to understand whether these interventions make a difference. So if I took one of our research programs that's actually in a different region,
right,
they're looking at the environmental causes of NCDs. So one country is looking at seawater incursion into water systems and the effects of salt on high blood pressure.
Wow.
And so encouraging local governments to invest in safe water supplies that don't have this excess salinity. So they're testing that intervention. In another one of their partners, they're looking at the respiratory illnesses caused by people burning plastics and working with local organizations to partly to recognize that that's a livelihood issue, right? People burn plastic because it's a livelihood. So how do you change that pattern of economic behavior to reduce the risk of this NCD? So all of the groups are doing interesting things, interesting interventions. They're only partway there because they're just about to test now. But alongside that, they've all been making huge strides in strengthening research capacity.
And probably because we're in Accra, are there some peculiarities that you're taking notice of here?
Well, I would say that a particularity here is the amenability of the health authorities, that's the Health Service and the Ministry of Health, to research evidence. I think that's a really special thing. It's clearly something that's been created over time, and the strong partnerships that exist between researchers and the agencies that will eventually have to implement the interventions that are determined to be effective. I think that's a really unique thing about Ghana.
Okay, so let's get into the solutions then. Public education a bit. Professor Agyeman, I'll start with you. You've dealt with many people, you've done research across the country. What are some of the common hurdles that you face, and how would you want to use this platform to just educate people more on these NCDs?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is these days everybody is an expert on TikTok, and an expert on social media, Facebook, and wherever you go. So we really need a way of almost enabling people to filter information and make choices. A lot of what we found and we are trying to respond to by stepping up education is that people get masses of information, conflicting information, and they have to take a decision. And sometimes they don't even know what decision to take. So that's one of the challenges. I wouldn't say we have all the answers, but we are drawing people's awareness that the fact that a thing is on social media, it may be true and excellent information, but it could also be fake education, just like we have fake news. And I think it's one of the challenges going forward, even if there's a way of verifying information. So that's one of the things with education, and then also awareness raising. In fact, I was struck during, 2 weeks ago, we went to Kwawa from Plains North because we tried to visit these districts. And I was struck by, I was not seeing fruits around, and people said fruits are expensive. And I thought, well, look at the wonderful climate we have. You throw a pawpaw seed on the ground, it grows. Anything grows. So is it really that fruits are expensive, or perhaps the awareness of how vital fruits are to your health has not come? So that's one of the issues we're also exploring. They're not just telling people what is good for you, but almost helping to create that enabling environment. If I come to Gas South, where we are working, in our discussion with them, some of them said, oh yeah, we know it's good to walk. If I walk, my life may end because of a motorbike or a cyclist or something. So for us, they were telling us that how do you make our roads safe? So there were intersectoral issues. For our intervention, we are looking at the primary care issues, but as part of our advocacy, we are flagging, and I think a station like you can help us, the intersectoral issues. When you are putting in a road, can you create safe pedestrian walkways? Can you create safe cycling lanes? Because people say, yeah, we've heard, we want to be more active, but we are afraid we will die trying to be more active. And so those kinds of...
diabetes has been mentioned. Is there any other disease that's of importance or that you're taking notice of in this whole research?
Diabetes, we started with hypertension, diabetes, mental health. They are a huge part of the burden. But there are other non-communicable diseases, and we've tried to emphasize that whatever systems we develop that work for primary care should be systems that you can now load on others. So, for example, for the screening we are doing now, I mentioned that we are working with Ghana Health Service too, and we've created a screening module in the e-tracker. You can actually add other diseases onto that screening module. So that if we show that, yes, this is making a difference, you can add on more. So,
yeah. Professor Kara, lifestyle obviously is influenced now by social media, no doubt about that. It could be a blessing, it could be a curse at the same time.
I think Prof. Irene's comment about the ability to detect signal from the noise is really important. There's a lot of lifestyle information, and a lot of it's really very inaccurate. I was just thinking what you were saying, Prof. Irene, about exercise. And on our way here, I was describing how I was able in the UK to use my commuting journey to get my exercise, because I can ride my bike to the train station. And I think it's really, as we see this transformation in the world to increasingly sedentary lifestyles, I think drawing attention to safe, active commuting would be a way also of helping people to build in some movement and build in some exercise into their daily routines.
And the bit on social media.
I have to confess that I'm a bit of a social media naive. I don't use it myself, and I don't really access it very much. But it's clearly a really important source of information. I think we can do what we can to use it in a constructive way to find reliable champions of healthy lifestyles and try to point out to people the need to be really careful consumers of social media, because a lot of information really isn't true. Okay,
before we go, a call to action, what would you want to leave with our viewers in terms of this whole campaign to stop NCDs?
I think there's some risk factors that are hard to change, but there's lots of stuff that we can do ourselves to improve our lifestyles, whether that is thinking about healthy eating, whether that is thinking about exercise and movement. And I think also the idea of involving our peers and our communities in that activity to give support and to get support.
Professor Ejapon?
There's a lot we can do. And I think we should show the way that there's a lot we can do. Turn things around in Ghana and let it be a path for all of West Africa.
Yeah, and I'll see both of you professors tomorrow morning. We'll jog in the morning before the conference, but thank you all for joining us in studio. You're watching Connect Africa. We'll be right back. When we get back, we'll talk about developments in Mali, plus some analysis on the matter. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, it's me. The one you poke, sip, and hopefully love. I'm your small reminder that growing up doesn't mean growing out of me. Trends come and go, but you still reach for me. I'm not just a drink, I'm that little sip that reminds you life can still be sweet. Calipo fruit juice drink, making sweet memories. This advert is FDA approved.
Hello, my name is Pamela from Customer Service. Please revalidate your account by texting your Ghana card number to 0500,000 247.
Hey, Abili, wabadim.
Madam, give me the numbers behind your ATM card. I'm calling from the head office.
An email was delivered across to our customers this morning.
Confirm if this is your bank account. 100,100,100.
Thanks for sending your bank card details.
Send the OTP now to avoid cancellation.
EcoBank will never call, email, send an SMS asking for your PIN, OTP, bank card, or Ghana card details.
Don't get played. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Hello, please, I'm calling from Customer Experience Center.
As 2030 approaches, it is time to assess and celebrate the SDG achievements of women.
He-for-she champions and organizations in Africa and the diaspora.
Women in Sustainability Africa, WISA, in partnership with the UN Global Compact, the Ministry of Gender,
Children and Social Protection Ghana, the Office of the Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability Ghana,
University of Ghana Department of Economics and EIB Network presents
the second Women in Sustainability Africa WISA Festival under the theme Empowering Women for the Economic Sustainability of Africa.
Date Friday 1st May 2026. Time 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Venue City Conference Center, University of Ghana, Legon.
This is a call to support and amplify the effort of women,
He-for-she champions, women groups, NGOs,
corporate institutions, and civil society organizations leading gender and SDG efforts across Africa and the diaspora.
Special guest of honor, Honorable Agnes Namomolate,
Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection Ghana.
Guest of honor, Honorable Isifu Seidu,
Minister of States for Climate Change and Sustainability Ghana.
Convener Nana Yasewa Sapon, Founder and President, Women in Sustainability Africa.
Special guest, Professor Priscilla Chumesi Bafo,
Associate Professor, University of Ghana, Department of Economics.
Tolulope Louis Tamoka, and Dr. Mrs. Gifty Owusu Ezekiel.
Special guest, Bishop E.O. Ansah, General Overseer, Eternal Life Church. Special guest, Nilgun Zaimoglu, President, Women's Development Association, Kajiga, Turkey.
Ambassador Dr. Mercy Gilbert, Ajwa Ajaychun,
Dr. Charity Binka.
Guest speakers, Juliet Ibrahim,
Madam Charity Akotia,
Lydia Abe,
Pearl Poku,
Yayra Agbufa,
Queen Mothers Association of Ghana. Performances, look out for sustainable fashion performance by revival.org and the ladies from Kantamanto Upcyclers Association.
Music performance by Lali and Lola, and comedy performance by Jacinta. Sponsors, APSA, Nestle, Beaver Drinks, Saks by Boundary Road,
GH Media School, Shape Healthcare, Media Partners, Nigeria, Zambia, Kenya, Uganda, Ghana.
Register for free at www.womeninsustainabilityafrica.org for more information.
WhatsApp or call 0202 733 1444.
Okay, good to be with you again on Connect Africa. Let's move to Mali now, because Russia is calling for Mali, the country, to return to peace and stability as soon as possible after a wave of attacks by jihadist and separatist groups were reported over the weekend. Kremlin is now seeing a rapid return to peaceful and a stable situation, and they believe that that will be an important process, but decline to indicate whether Russia's Africa Corps has enough forces on the ground to contain the crisis. Well, we've been speaking to an expert on the security situation in Mali, and here's his view on Russia's support and the dynamics influencing this latest crisis.
In the country, Mali, over some 20 years, when the Tuareg forces all moved from Libya and then came to the northern part of Mali. I would say that on the West African belt, that is a country that houses about 17 active rebel groups. 17 active rebel groups. They have rebel groups, terrorism, jihadism, Al-Qaeda, Daesh, ISIS, separatist groups, separatist movement, and all kind of insurgencies, and then separatist movements.
As many as 17?
17 active. Don't forget that Boko Haram was a product of one of those. the Jenim, for instance, that is where Mohammed Yusuf, Mustafa Bonkanu, and all the Boko Haram boys who had gone there to learn Quran or to study Quran, that is where they all emanated from. So if you look at it from the time even Boko Haram had gone there, that radical jihadism group was already there in 2002 when Boko Haram was formed originally in Mali and exported to Nigeria. So it's something that is very difficult to deal with the situation of Mali. Here is the case that the France, that's supposed all being the colonial masters, that intended on show a kind of spirit to resolve the issue happened not to be the case because they themselves were meddling with the groups, because it's very difficult in another breath that we have Al-Qaeda, and then we have ISIS, that is the Daesh, and then you have Jenim, and then you have Ansawad, you have Ansadin, and you have a lot of them. If you box and put all of them together, some operate jihadism, some operate terrorism, some are rebel-related group, some are Islamic jihad-related group, and then different groups scattered around. But then interestingly, it's all within the same region. And what is the region? The Timbuktu region of the northern, the Kidal side, and the Negao. Don't forget that the whole group originates back to the southern part of Libya, which is Gat. And then it originates back to the southern part of also Algeria, and then Libya as well. So the Tuareg group that were operating in Libya, they moved on the Haga Plateau. And the Haga Plateau, where the Mali borders with Niger, that is the Zendere side, Arlit, Asamaka, those regions, all under the south, leading to Mali side of the eastern north, leading to also the Niger north, leading to the southern Algeria, the Haga Plateau, and then far out to the Libya.
So for you, all of this is a spillover effect?
It's a spillover effect that had existed. Ideally, the Tuareg group were actually assigned in the Sabah region where they were with Gaddafi. So after the fall of Muammar al-Gaddafi, these Tuaregs were Malians. These Tuaregs were Nigerians from Niger, and these Tuaregs, some of the southern part of Algeria, but they all moved together, and then they went to house themselves in a place where they feel that, okay, that is where we can house and then feel.
Looking at last Saturday's activities, many are unable to tell the motive.
Yes, the motive is that. Don't forget that Assimi Goïta, he has been a French legionnaire. French legionnaire means that when the France government and France troops had joined the NATO and went to Afghanistan, Assimi Goïta, Mamadou Doumbouya of Guinea today, Ibrahim Traoré's boss, Damiba, and then also Chiani of Niger, all of them went with the French to Afghanistan to fight for French government. When they returned, Assimi Goïta himself in 2020 was heading a unit for the French, which seems to be to solving the problem of this Al-Qaeda and all these scattered groups. But then he later found that that was not the motive. The motive was rather different, which the French government, also called the French government, they were rather interested in the minerals. And then he also found out that no, the central government, Conakry's government at that time, was not doing enough to resolve the issue, allowing the Malian army to fight, out of which that he, Assimi Goïta, if you remember, he came for the first time, spent only some 38 days in the 2020, and then gave back power to Bandao. Bandao did about 200 and something days, and then he came back again because he realized that the central government was something with the government of the French were not solving the issues, and there was an establishment that all these Al-Qaeda groups, etc., they are proxies to some extent. These are the extensions of those operating in Niger. These were the extensions operating in Burkina Faso. And then also the base was Mali. And the group insists that, yes, you are part of us. You know what we're doing. Some of them maybe we did with you. Now we want to come and take over power. Let us not forget that there is a foreign interest. There is a French interest. Because Assimi Goïta, perhaps you see it, he has departed and moved away from the French.
But is that not questionable when we say there's still a French interest in all of this?
Well, it is the case. Anybody who says arguably that the French, no, it is the case. Because look at Mali's resources in the north. Mali's resources, Niger's resources, Burkina, called the Sahel regions of the three. These were countries that French has done a lot, and let me call it, milked a lot with them. So seeing Mali moving out, calling the bluff of the French, and then also Burkina isolating them, and then Niger, Chiani also isolating them. There's a kind of economic heat on French, where the French governance and the politicians are actually on the neck of Macron, that all this thing happened. And for that matter, French is having a way to establish. Don't forget that the Western world have played this kind of tricks. I'm sorry, the US and the UKs and all that, they play the same tricks. That wherever there's at a point where rebel will serve their interests, they are with them. Where separatist group will serve their interests, they are with them. But then at the same time, they have condemned one way or the other all these insurgents group. But you realize that how can Al-Qaeda, which is one of the most wanted group of the world, but look at where they are today. They are being praised in where? In Syria. They are being praised in other places where they serve the interests of their colonial master sponsoring them. That is what the issue is. So Assimi Goïta last Saturday or this weekend's uprising against him is nothing home just only to replace his government and bring somebody that will be d'accord, who will bring back the government of Mali to the French fold.
Why are you not looking within? Because the AES itself, the structure is being questioned as to what the motive is. How long are they going to be in office? Could that not be part of the challenges?
Let me just tell you, the existence of Mali post-independent 1960, it is only one of the African countries, together with Guinea, Conakry, that have had military regime longer than any of them. We have had 13 head of states post-independence in 1957. Mali have had 7 leaders. But to count the 7 leaders, military regime took more than 40 years in different times of Mali. So it's a country it's actually involved.
So they're used to?
They are used to.
Military leaders?
Yes, of course, because Modibo Keïta, who was the founder of the post-independent first president, he did 8 years. Moussa Traoré removed him and stayed 22 years in power. And then also Amadou Toumani also removed him and stayed in power before giving power to Alpha Konari. Konari did 10 years. Toumani came back again with an independent, did 10 years. After Toumani, they didn't allow him to spend even his 10 years. At the tail end, imagine you're going 5 years, 2 tenure. But even some few days or some few months to the 10 years, they didn't. So Sonogo came and removed him. When Sonogo removed him, then the Akunda also came and removed him again. Before Keïta also came. Keïta did his 10 years. He didn't finish his 10 years. Then Assimi Goïta also came to remove him. So look at the consistency of their coup d'etats and how it is being staged. Because we don't pay much attention because it's the French. But when you go to the analysis analytically, it tells you that Mali coup d'etat, not different from Guinea-Conakry, not different from Niger. Burkina, to some extent, have also featured back-to-back coup d'etat more than any other country, also in the West African belt. So it's something that related to them. So it's just a matter of either the structures are good or not. There's a justification that they've had a consistent, let's say, a normal civilian government. But even civilian government, who at all cannot wait for civilian government that has gone for 10 years, going for 10 years. You've done the first 5 years. Then the second 5 years, you are left with 2 months. Does that warrant a coup d'etat? At least one could have waited for the 2 months, and then maybe you're juggling or whatever. But all these things happen not to be.
Do you believe he's still alive?
Who?
Assimi Goïta?
Well, you know, it is 50-50 affair.
That's the question.
Yeah, but the point is that you should understand that modern days, security, etc., one is able to coordinate intelligence, coordinate cyber, coordinate all kind of forces to locate where he is. So for him to come out, because they want to make sure that Bamako itself is okay. But as for the Koloba Palace, like the Golden Jubilee here, he's not at the Koloba. But you should also understand that he has been a legionnaire. He's a fighter. He's a guerrilla fighter. So he knows that the boys are around. And this jihadist group, surprisingly, it was only one group that came to Bamako. What happened over the weekend?
So many splinter groups?
Yeah, the Janim came. The Jamaat, Nasra Islam Wal Muslimi, they came. But they come with branches. And Sawat also went in. And Sudan certainly also went in. Then the militant groups also. But don't forget that the central government army also have some militant groups that fight on behalf of this. So how were they able to break? And from Gao, Kidal, Timbuktu, all the way to Bamako, you're talking about thousands of kilometers. How were they built and how did they manage to get to Bamako enclave and all of them moving at the same time? So it's a bit of a concern. There was a security breach and they were able to kill the defense minister. And for that matter, yes, they whisked him away. Certainly, I know he's unhurt. Certainly, he's not killed. He's not injured. However, he doesn't want to. And don't forget that.
His location.
Because the Russians are advising him. The Russians are advising him because he's relying heavily on the Russian security guards. These were things that Gaddafi didn't do, and the West were able to kill him. This is something that Samora Machel didn't do. Russians will tell you what is actually coming up, so move or stop. So I'm looking at the situation that he's just in a hide, cooling off the space, while the country is secured, while the Kolobak Palace is secured, while the government is stabilized, still, and then he will emerge. But for now, he wouldn't.
Let's speak to their accountability and their failure to hand over power to civilian rule.
Yes.
Why are they simply not doing that? They seem to be overstaying. I don't know if that's a fair way of describing what's happening. You hear from the likes of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore saying, well, forget about democracy.
Yes. To some extent, you would understand them to some extent. We're talking about democracy. Democracy is what? Democracy to us in Ghana and other places is to have your finger very clean, John Q, no fight, go and vote, and then you walk home. Now, has it served all the time the purposes which we repose the trust? Sometimes to some extent not. I'm not defending them, I'm not praising them, but sometimes there's instances where some of these coup d'etats, they've stabilized countries, they've stabilized system. Let's say in the case of Gaddafi, one would say that he was a dictator. Gaddafi would say that he was not a dictator. He was a person making sure that his government or his country was well managed, and he did that. Post-Gaddafi, is Libya having government? No. So as a greatest issue, don't forget that there were two declarations. Pediasi Declaration 1. That forced him to give power after the 30 days. Pediasi Declaration 2, with Nana-Addo and then other foreign ministers, that is what turned the ECOWAS table that we've suspended you. It was at the same time they suspended the Guinea, and then also, they also suspended Chiani, they also suspended what was the name, Traore. Now, they've overstayed in power. But the point is that the country must to some extent be stable. The reality also is that he feels, being a legionnaire and be with the French, he knows the intentions and what is happening in the north. Because when they went to the north, the whole huge minerals that Mali has is all found in the north. Why is the north that the French had gone there and they wanted to cool off the pace, cool off peace, and find out solutions to the rebel activities? But French couldn't do it. So he is saying that, okay, I'll stay in power, and make sure that I stabilize the system. That is what calls for, of course, of opposition. But then, of course, there's a country noted and known.
Don't you feel that they are losing legitimacy now?
It is true. You may say so. But then don't forget about anybody who calls himself the head of state and holding the power. It's not easy for them to give power. It is something very normal all over. Even the Western Hemisphere, there were coup d'etats in Romania, etc. There have been coup d'etats in the past. European countries, a lot of them have the military government. That lasted for a little bit longer. What about the Latin America, the Central America, Peru and others? They all have military coup d'etats. So it is not necessarily handing over power is the issue. The handing over power and how the country would also run from there. So legitimacy.
That's the bigger concern.
That is the concern.
But the missing link is ECOWAS now. If they were in the fold, some stability would have been guaranteed, or you've lost hope in
Listen. Before these three countries called the Sahel region went out from ECOWAS, disjoined themselves from ECOWAS. Tell me, on the West African belt, which of the countries had ECOWAS been in support when they were in crisis? ECOWAS had operated biasly, in a very biased way. That is why some of the members, like Mauritania, they left the ECOWAS region. What am I saying?
But they want in.
What am I saying? Because during the time that Ghana, we had President Agyeman-Rawlings as a military leader in the 90s, wearing uniform. We had also a certain IBB, Ibrahim Babangida, subsequently later Abacha, and all this. They were all wearing military uniform. At the time, every West African country, about 10 of the leaders were all what? Wearing military uniform, you remember, leading up to the early 2000s. What really happened? What happened was that whereas we surcharged, whereas we accused Mauritania leaders as having plotted coup and then asked them to exit, or we suspended them for ECOWAS. What about Ghana president? What about Nigerian head of state? They all wearing military uniform. What about Benin? They were wearing military uniform. So one would say that ECOWAS, not different from African Union, and not for that matter, not different from even UN. They choose and pick selective justice choices. And when it happens like that, the leaders now sit up, like the Sahel boys are doing, that we don't care about ECOWAS. It hasn't had any effect on them. Neither had ECOWAS also benefited. Rather, ECOWAS would have, in a way, tried to close on them and invite them quietly. We went the hardest way, we'd send you off. But let me ask you, ECOWAS member states of the 15, tell me, is Ghana owing Togo $1? Answer is no. Is Ghana owing Nigeria $1? Answer is no. So the economic, political, and then the cross-border, and then the citizens and all that put everything together. Tell me which of the benefits that has given to you as far as ECOWAS, apart from the diplomatic speeches. The declaration since 1975 by ECOWAS, some of them had not been signed today. How do I go to Togo, buy small items of goods? We have tax, and then you will have to be Ghana. Even Ghana here, you go through it, how many stops? So
Farouk Al-Wahab is an international security consultant. That's all we have for you in this package of Connect Africa. We'll connect again. I'm blessed to log on to myjoyonline.com. More stories there for you. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
My name is Akufo-Addo, and I'm the Executive Director for Lifeline for Child Defense Ghana. We are a patient organization and the fundraising foundation partner for the Pediatric Oncology Unit of Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital. We also support Akufo-Addo Teaching Hospital. Sometimes we also support Tamale Teaching Hospital as well. So we are a fundraising organization, like I said. We raise funds for the treatment and care of children with cancer in Ghana, just because it's really a public health issue, you know. Just even getting to understand that every year we expect, you know, maybe even up to 1,400 children are likely to get cancer before they turn 15 years. In Ghana only. Unfortunately, our survival is not that great, you know, so our survival is over 30%, just a little over 30%. So it means for every 10 children that are likely to get cancer, we will lose 7. So since 2018, I can say for a fact that we've supported over 2,200 children. I was very surprised to hear. I'm very thankful for whoever donated, but I think it's a great event, a great award ceremony, to the extent that it showcases the work of other people, you know, and for us in the children's cancer space that people know so little about. I'm very excited that, you know, we've been nominated, and to the extent that, you know, people are open to the idea. It is not a taboo, it's not witchcraft, it's a disease, but it's curable. I think it would save so many lives, so thank you. I'm very excited about the award and what it can potentially do.
The city had one of its most dramatic years in recent memory. It opened 2025 at 14 cities, 70 pesos to the dollar. By February, it had weakened slightly to 15 cities, 50 pesos. It stayed there until April, one of the longest periods of stability in more than a decade. Then came the surprise. Between April and May, the city shot up. It strengthened from 15 cities, 50 pesos to 10 cities, 30 pesos in just 5 weeks. From May through July and into early August, it held steady between 10 cities, 30 pesos and 10 cities, 50 pesos. But by mid-August, the tide turned. In only 3 weeks, it slipped to 12 cities. That has made it one of the worst performing currencies in the third quarter of 2025. External conditions have not changed much. In fact,